Paper covers the desk, names inked in a steady, unhurried hand. Candlelight catches the wax seal, still warm at the corner of the page. Albert leans over the list, his finger tracing each line the way a careful man checks an invoice before signing it. "You hesitate," Monte Cristo says, without lifting his eyes from the page. "The Danglars match troubles you." Albert begins to answer. The Count has already anticipated the thought. Marry where it profits you, or marry where you love. Rarely both. I abandoned that illusion long ago. The pen returns to the list, moving without pause. Villefort, Danglars, the minister, and his wife. Each name earns the slightest nod, a private calculation settling behind calm eyes, the quiet arithmetic of a man arranging every place before the guests arrive. Albert asks about his own family. Will the Count of Morcerf and his mother be among those welcomed at Auteuil? He asks with easy confidence, expecting nothing unusual. They will not, Monte Cristo says. Not this time. No explanation follows. The pen moves to the next line, as though the question has vanished into the ink. Albert watches the steady hand continue its work, searching the Count's composed expression for some clue. He finds only the same warmth that first drew him to this house, a warmth capable, in the same quiet breath, of choosing who enters and who remains outside. Dust sheets come down from every window at Auteuil. The smell of fresh plaster drifts from room to room like a slow tide. Bertuccio follows the workman with a ledger, marking what must be done and when. Monte Cristo walks the corridor without pausing. Each room receives its instructions in turn, aired, repapered, dressed with fresh drapery, until he reaches the final door. That one stays as it is, he says, never breaking stride. Nothing changed. Not the bed, not the hangings, not the dust upon the sill. Bertuccio's pen stills above the page. His eyes move from the door to the Count, then back again. Finding nothing to question, he writes the order exactly as given. The Count continues on, already discussing curtains and carpets. Behind him, the red damask door keeps its silence, the only room left untouched inside a house being renewed. Bertuccio will pass it many times before the week is over. Each time, his steps grow slower. Each time, he keeps his thoughts to himself. The room above the tailor's shop smells of starch and beeswax, the trappings of a gentleman assembled in a single night. The Major stands before the mirror, adjusting a collar that never quite feels like his own. He straightens it once, then again. He clears his throat and repeats the line he has practiced a dozen times, only to stumble over the word sisters. My son. Raised at a school near Viterbo, by the sisters after his mother's passing. Ça me va, Monte Cristo says, without looking up from the papers in his hands. Not Viterbo, say it again. The Major repeats the story, slower this time. The words finally settle into place. Monte Cristo hands him a folded bundle of certificates. Birth, baptism, a marriage ended by a death that never happened. The Major accepts them with both hands, as though they might break. He never asks what became of the real son, wherever he may be. His only question, spoken almost under his breath, is when the money will arrive. The letter that summoned him named no father and no fortune. It carried only an address, an hour, and the signature of a name that appears in no Paris registry Sinbad the Sailor. Now he waits in a borrowed coat, knees turned toward the door, while Monte Cristo studies a dossier thick with dates the young man has memorized again and again. Your mother, Monte Cristo says, without looking up. Where did she die? Lucca, the young man replies, before I could remember her face. The convent school. Its name. The answer comes without hesitation, polished beyond belief. Monte Cristo closes the dossier. Elsewhere in the house, another stranger paces in an ill-fitting uniform, rehearsing the words that will make this young man his son for the first time in either of their lives. Neither has asked what became of the family they are about to claim. A servant's hand settles on the door latch. Monte Cristo gives a single nod. The door opens onto the one moment no rehearsal can master. The performance ends the moment the door closes. Left alone, the major is the first to abandon his borrowed humility. He counts the bills in his pocketbook with greater care than he ever gave the tale of a son lost and found. Across the room, the young man drops his roll even faster. He sinks into the finest chair as though he already owns it, and draws a cigar from a case worth more than the day's performance. "Yours came," how he asks, without looking up. "A letter," the major replies, "signed Abbé Busoni. Mine was an Englishman, Lord Wilmore." Neither man wonders why a priest and an English lord would arrange the same deception in the same house on the same afternoon. At the spy hole, Monte Cristo remains perfectly still. He has endured worse performances than this, and he waits through the only honest conversation either man will have all day. Only after the final word fades does the faintest trace of amusement touch his face. It never reaches his eyes. The door closes behind them both. The major's tread heavy and unhurried, the young man's step lighter, already counting the next roll. Monte Cristo remains at the spy hole long after there is nothing left to watch. 2 empty chairs, a candle burned to its final inch, the hush that settles over a room once the performance is over. "Miscreants," he says at last, to the emptiness they have left behind. Both of them. He speaks as a man closing a ledger. There is no anger in the word, no surprise. He purchased their obedience, never their character, and paid exactly what such men were worth. What lingers is not their corruption, but the ease with which the lie assembled itself. 2 strangers stepping without hesitation into lives that had never belonged to them. This is no longer an elaborate jest. It has not been for a long time. The garden wall keeps the day's warmth long after the light has faded. Valentine waits at the gate, her fingers woven through the iron, listening for footsteps she knows by their weight alone. Maximilian arrives without the easy confidence he wears by daylight. Here, his hands find the bars before they find hers. "They have set a date with Monsieur d'Épinay," she says. "My father calls it an honor." "And your stepmother?" She tells everyone the marriage cannot come soon enough, yet every week she discovers another reason to delay it. A married Valentine is a fortune beyond her reach. An unmarried one is still hers to govern. Maximilian offers no comfort that could lessen the truth. He watches her hand return to the iron, fingers spread, open, quietly offered. He kisses it once, slowly, where the bars permit no greater closeness. She does not draw away. She had never imagined herself capable of such boldness, and that discovery frightens her more than the wedding day already fixed. Before he can speak her name, she is gone. The sick room smells of beeswax and old paper. The notary's case rests open on the table beside Noirtier's chair, like an offering laid before a judge forbidden to speak. Villefort addresses his father as he would a courtroom, measured, final, already convinced of the verdict. Monsieur d'Épinay has asked for Valentine's hand. The contract is drawn. I have come to inform you, as courtesy requires. Noirtier never looks away from his son's face. His eyes have become the only fists left to him. When Villefort turns to discuss a clause with the notary, Valentine kneels beside her grandfather. She lowers her voice to his ear. "I despise him, grandfather. I despise the whole arrangement." His gaze meets hers, steady, fierce, untouched by the years or by the stroke that claimed the rest of him. The notary returns with pen in hand and asks for the record whether the old man consents to the marriage. Noirtier closes his eyes, slowly, deliberately. He does not open them again until the question has passed. The notary records the gesture as weariness. Valentine knows better. She has seen that answer before. It is the last word her grandfather possesses, and he has spent it. The dictionary lies open across Noirtier's knees, its pages softened by years of faithful use. Valentine kneels beside him, one hand resting on the book, her eyes locked on his. The notary waits with pen raised for a will that can speak only through her voice. Letter by letter, she gathers his answer from the movement of his eyes. forcing each syllable into certainty. 900,000 francs, the whole of my fortune, withdrawn from my granddaughter, in protest of a marriage forced upon her against my known will. The notary checks the sum against the family papers twice before committing it to ink. The figure is exact to the franc. There is no uncertainty in the dictation, no hesitation in the amount. Only an old man's mind, sharp and unbroken, wielding the last weapon still within his reach. Villefort reads the draft without betraying a flicker of emotion. Then she marries without a dowry, he says. The Dépinets are not purchasing a fortune. The wedding proceeds. The notary places the disinheritance beside the marriage contract in the same leather case. A fortune surrendered in protest, reduced to another document already filed away. Morning veils the windows of the Villefort house in black. The silence within carries the weight that follows a coffin through a hallway. Monte Cristo passes through it without disturbing a thread, offering condolences in the measured cadence of a man who has buried many strangers, sympathy weighed to the ounce, never beyond it. Villefort receives him in the small salon, gratitude and unease struggling for the same expression. He speaks of the Marquis as the dead are often remembered. Virtues recited, debts forgiven, funeral arrangements already replacing grief. Monte Cristo listens. His questions sound like kindness, yet gather like evidence. Who remained with the old man in his final hours? What the physician observed? How swiftly the illness took hold? At the door, his hand already on the frame, he pauses as though recalling a trivial detail. Auteuil. Strange. I am told my own house there once belonged to the Saint-Méran family. Villefort's hand stills on the latch. Something passes behind his eyes before discipline buries it once more. Monte Cristo bows without haste and steps into the waiting carriage, leaving nothing of himself behind but the question. A telegraph tower stands watch over a hillside 3 relays from Madrid, far from Paris and its black-draped windows. Behind the relay house lies a garden no one of consequence has ever praised, dahlias coaxed from thin soil by a lonely, patient man. Monte Cristo notices them. He crouches beside the flower bed before speaking of business, asking instead about frost, blight, and stubborn roots. You have done more with this slope, he says, than the ministry has done with half of Spain. The operator flushes at being seen. By the time the favor is finally named, one signal sent a fraction astray between men trained to notice the smallest detail. It sounds less like treason than the repayment of a kindness. Coins pass quietly from hand to hand. The semaphore arms swing through a borrowed message, station after station, faster than any rider and faster than denial. In Paris, the Bourse opens to reports of a fleeing king and an empty throne. Spanish bonds collapse before noon. Danglars, certain the news must be true, watches 1,000,000 francs vanish into a column of figures. No king has fled. No throne stands empty. Only a signal bent half a degree from the truth, and a fortune purchased with a few thoughtful words about another man's flowers. Candlelight doubles the table's wealth in crystal, without spending a single centime. Forks rise and fall in polished rhythm. Wine carries every conversation a little closer to indiscretion. Madame Danglars laughs at something Debray has not yet finished saying. Her hand drifts to the edge of the table, almost carelessly. A square of paper, folded twice and smaller than a calling card, slips beneath her glove into Debray's waiting fingers before either expression changes. No one else lifts a glance. Monte Cristo does. He never lingers on the exchange. His eyes pass over it the way a seasoned traveler notes a change in the weather before mentioning it. Then they return to his wine, his guests, and easy questions about horses, harvests, and a daughter's health. The note joins everything else the evening has quietly revealed. He studies the table like a board where every piece has already begun to move, not like a gathering of friends sharing a meal. At the sideboard, Bertuccio counts the guests the way he always does before one of his master's dinners. Still, watchful, more guardian than servant. 1. Madame Danglars, laughing at nothing, candlelight tracing the line of her throat exactly as it had long before this house existed. 2. Villefort, calm and deliberate, pouring his own wine instead of waiting to be served, carrying the certainty of a man who has spent a lifetime believing himself beyond harm. 3. The Count stops on a face far too young for the company surrounding it, a face relaxed among strangers who believe they know its history. Bertuccio cannot move. Even his breath deserts him. The serving cloth slips from his hand, and he never feels it fall. For 15 years, he believed he had buried the past beneath this ground. 15 years, and now it sits at his master's table, calmly asking for another glass of wine. He cannot yet see the shape of Monte Cristo's design. He knows only that the ground beneath every year of faithful service has, in the space of a single held breath, become uncertain. Gold catches the candlelight and sends it back twice as bright. Porcelain answers silver with a quiet ring. Course follows course with measured precision, each dish arriving like a verdict delivered without haste. Wealth, displayed this completely, ceases to be ornament. It becomes armor, then weapon. Brocade hangs like fortress walls. Every jeweled hand suggests not only what its owner possesses, but what that owner expects to survive. The room dines. It never suspects it is being measured. Wine tilts through fingers heavy with rings bought to be admired. Laughter climbs a little too high, then settles again. Monte Cristo scarcely touches the feast before him. Instead, he watches what everyone else chooses to touch. His gaze moves along the table with the precision of a ledger. Name, appetite, weakness. A glance lingering too long upon another man's wife. A hand reaching for wine before bread, every single time. Each habit is recorded with the calm attention of a physician taking a pulse, without surprise, without comment, preserved for its proper hour. He speaks rarely. Every word lands exactly where it was intended. Beyond the windows, Paris remains wrapped in ordinary darkness. Within them, a fortune is consumed by guests who imagine themselves honored spectators. None of them understands the truth. The performance belongs to them, and the only witness who matters sits quietly at the head of the table, cataloging every course while waiting for the evening to darken. The corridor seems to narrow long before the doorway appears. The candlelight grows thin. The wallpaper has faded to the color of old wine, and beneath the scents of wax and dust lingers another smell that no broom has disturbed in years. Every other room has been stripped clean and renewed. This one remains untouched. The gilt has lost its shine. The drapes hang exactly as they did before a single guest crossed the threshold. Monte Cristo holds the door open with the quiet courtesy of a man unveiling a relic. Laughter fades one step inside, not because of any spoken warning, but because the room itself receives each visitor like a confessional, welcoming the burden of a stranger. He begins to speak of the garden beyond the windows, of old digging, of a small box uncovered beneath a tree, scarcely larger than a cradle. His voice never rises. It has no need to. Whoever buried it, he says, believed the ground itself would keep the secret. The silence that follows seems to gather dust back into the air. Madame Danglars' fan stops in mid-stroke. Color drains from her face more quickly than a failing candle. She utters no cry. She sinks into the nearest chair, and the fan slips from her fingers to strike the floor. A tiny sound swallowed by everything the room has guarded for so many years. Lantern light reaches no farther than the broken earth. Beyond it, the tree stands stripped of half its roots, dirt mounded high on either side of the pit the workmen opened at dusk. Monte Cristo leads the party through the terrace doors himself, offering an arm to no one. A host is saving the final chamber for last. The men with shovels stand back from the hole, caps in hand, the way laborers retreat from something they never wished to uncover. Villefort finds himself nearer the pit than he intended, drawn by a magistrate's instinct to lean toward evidence. Even here, even where no court of his will ever hear the case. Monte Cristo does not raise his voice. He has not done so all evening. No one moves. Somewhere, a glass is set down too quickly. Its faint click against a tray becomes the loudest sound in the garden. They came down through clay older than this house and struck an iron box no deeper than a christening gown is long. Inside it lay a newborn's bones. The garden holds its breath the way deep water holds a stone. Villefort reaches for the back of a chair that is not there. His hand closes on empty air, and the unfinished motion is the only soundless confession his body allows. Across the lawn, supported between two footmen, Madame Danglars does not faint again. Her face passes beyond pallor, beyond shock, until only recognition remains. Separated by a stretch of grass, two faces arrive at the same understanding in the same instant. Neither turns toward the other. Neither can look away from the pit. The garden empties a little at a time. Lanterns drift back toward the house, one after another, until the stripped tree and the freshly filled pit are left to darkness, and the men who covered the earth again. The guests find their carriages without remembering the walk. Whatever conversation returns is quiet, clipped, and safely about nothing. Villefort crosses the lawn with a magistrate's measured stride, trained never to let his pace betray the labor of his thoughts. He does not search for Madame Danglars. There is no need. Near the gate, where the last lantern surrenders to the gravel road, their paths meet as though by chance, though neither believes in chance. Only a handful of words are exchanged, pitched beneath even the gravel's hearing. Tomorrow, her house. The hour before noon, when the servants go to market. They separate for different carriages, neither hurrying nor lingering long enough to invite notice. Behind them, the garden settles into the silence that follows a breath held too long, at last released.